Thank you to Cheryl for sharing with us that which is the most powerful and most beautiful statement of the concept of the saints, of the sainthood of all believers, which is a core concept of the Reformed tradition. And so we're thankful that on this All Saints Sunday that we can reflect upon that passage as it touches our hearts. We also know that this is a Sunday where a lot of different things come together, and so let me see if I can go through these. Happy All Saints Communion Sunday. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Happy Halloween. Yeah, we're all full of candy. Well, not me. Well, I guess. Yeah. And happy first Sunday in November, and we've already had our first major snowfall. Yeah, okay. So we're covering a lot of territory here. And so this Sunday we could go through the verses from Scripture that speak of the sainthood of all believers, the standard phrase of our Reformed tradition that we've just noted. But those words are so powerful that they stand on their own. They speak to us. And so I thought I would look and see what does the common traditional lectionary have to share about the sainthood of all believers for this Sunday. And well, the gospel text for this Sunday may be one that could go well or maybe not so well with the saints theme. After all, when you say the word saint, what comes to mind? You know, we often have the image of the classical named saints. You know, there's St. Francis, and noted for his kindness, and St. Augustine or Augustine, depending upon what part of the country you come from, and his teachings. St. Benedict and his ecclesiology, St. Andrew, the Church of Scotland, of course, there's Presbyterians, and St. Meinrad. You're all up on St. Meinrad? He was a hermit. I think he was murdered in his hermitage by robbers. Not sure what else. I mean, there is a college and seminary in southern Indiana named after him. Oh, okay, so you did learn something today. I had a friend who went there to the college and the seminary, so that's why I know about it. Okay, so those are kind of name brand saints. But how about this guy? How about this guy as a saint? From the Gospel of Luke. Jesus entered Jericho on his way to Jerusalem and was passing through it. A man was there named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd, he could not because he was short in stature. So he ran ahead. He climbed a sycamore tree to see Jesus because Jesus was going to be passing that way. Zacchaeus. You know, we all sang the little songs in church schools. Zacchaeus was a little man and all this stuff. Sycamore trees. Do you have any sycamore trees in your yard? I used to. Huge leaves, huge mess in the fall. Well, sycamore trees were all over Palestine, and they were very tall and they were very broad trees because they weren't trimmed. The limbs were close to the ground. Okay, they went very far out, and they had enormous leaves. And so a person like Zacchaeus could climb up in a sycamore tree very easily and could not be seen, but he could peer down through the huge leaves incognito. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today." Well, so much for incognito. He was discovered. Busted. I guess when you're short and when all the people hate you intensely because you're the chief tax collector, well, they're not going to pick you up so you can see. They're not going to get out of your way, and they're not going to let you to the front for a better view. Plus, as a rich guy who was rich by means of his corruption on the scale of thievery, they wouldn't want to even be near you, and they certainly wouldn't want you to be in the midst of them. So Zacchaeus hurried down and was happy to welcome Jesus. All who saw it began to grumble and said, "He has gone to be the guest of one who is a sinner." Well, isn't that just like Jesus? You know, no active discernment about who the proper people are. Surely we could point Jesus in the direction of some of the local saints of whom he would readily approve, but Zacchaeus? Seriously? Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Look, half of my possessions, Lord, I will give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much." Well, now there is a shocker. Zacchaeus says that he's going to help out the poor. He's never had any regard for the poor. I mean, after all, they don't pay taxes, and so he can't cheat them by taking the excess that he was charging. In fact, this actually was the best time of year for Zacchaeus to be making a lot of money by cheating travelers with taxes. You see, many of them were going from Galilee to Jerusalem for Passover. Jesus was too. And they wanted to avoid going through Samaria because it was dangerous and the Samaritans hated them and vice versa. So they would go through the eastern side of the Jordan River. They would cross the Jordan River at Jericho and then wind their way up to Jerusalem. So Zacchaeus, smart guy, he sets up a toll booth. He really did. He set up a toll booth so he could charge for each man, each woman, each child, each donkey, and each camel that had to pass his toll to get through Jericho on the way to Jerusalem. The man really was a thief. And now, in front of all the people, he meets Jesus and he admits that he has cheated them, that he's stolen from them, because he now offers to give back to them the amount 4 times. Did you notice that? 4 times. This is the amount the Jewish law required for reparations to someone that you had cheated or for whom you had stolen. 4 times as much in return. They can't believe it. They can't believe that Zacchaeus is publicly confessing to his thievery. Then Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek out and to save the lost." Oh my goodness. Jesus is calling this guy, Zacchaeus, a saint. He's saying he's one of us. He's the son of Abraham. He's one who was lost, and now he's found. Incredible. And now Jesus says he's going to stay with him. He's going to eat with him. He's going to accept Zacchaeus' hospitality. Now, just to make it clear, in the Middle East, when you would accept someone's hospitality, and even more if you break bread with them, you're proclaiming by your actions that you accept the person, that you have regard for them, you respect the humanity of that person, and that you have equality with that person. You're elevating them to the same level that you are. And so all the people in Jericho are speechless. Except for Zacchaeus. He's pretty chatty. And he's so happy. He's so relieved. He's so released. He's so thankful that he cannot control his joy. Zacchaeus is a changed man. No longer this strange little guy that we love to hate. Zacchaeus is one of us. What just happened here? How can this all be happening on All Saints Sunday? Well, it's kind of a God thing. You remember what God said? God with us, Emmanuel in Hebrew. God is with us. What Ephesians says is our inheritance from God. That's what occurs whenever we find ourselves face to face with the real love of God in real time, in whatever tree perch we found to climb into. This past week, I realized something important about God's ways of doing things, the God thing. When Honoree invited me to volunteer with her at the senior center in Middleton. Now there, on this one day, all the businesses and agencies in Middleton, they had paper pumpkins in the windows, and kids were invited to come and trick or treat at all the stores where there were pumpkins in the window. Now, Honoree had a lovely plaster mask, and she had a top hat and a red boa, and she looked very classy and really cute. I had a huge pug dog mask. I am not going to put it on and wear it and preach. But I did notice when the really little kids came in with their parents and suddenly they're confronted with a 6-foot pug dog, they suddenly would cringe back and they'd hide behind their parents, especially then when I barked. Friends, this was not going well. And so, using a couple of the senior center cushions, I got down on my knees. I sat back on my heels. I was at eye level with these little ones. And instead of barking at them, I just kind of slowly moved my head in kind of a pug dog fashion, like that. Okay. I moved my head just to show that I was watching them, acknowledging them. And it was almost like a power switch being thrown. They started coming up to me. They would reach out and touch the mask. And then when I quietly barked, then I'd say to them, "Give me some paw." And they would all give me a high five. These little kids were giving me high fives. You see, I was now on their level. They were on my level. I was accepting them and acknowledging them. And suddenly it was okay for us to really connect. We were in this together with our costumes and our candy and our decorations. And a few of them even whispered to me, "You're not really a dog, you're a person." And I said quietly back to them, "Shh, this is our secret." You see, we had the ultimate insider information, and it really, really made us smile. It reminded me of something I had read from the amazing Trappist monk Thomas Merton. Many of us had read. He's one of the great contemplatives of our time. He's somebody who tried to go through all the monastic practices, solitude and fasting and all that, and he still couldn't seem to connect and experience God until one day he's down in the center of Louisville, Kentucky at 4th and Walnut, and he says, "I was suddenly overwhelmed with the realization that I loved all these people, that they were mine and I was theirs, that we could not be alien to each other even though we were total strangers. It was like waking from a dream of separateness, of spurious self-isolation in a special world." That was his spiritual awakening. I love these people. They're mine. I am theirs. And he kind of speaks to the situation with Zacchaeus. And Thomas Merton wrote, "Love is the revelation of our deepest personal meaning, value, identity. This revelation becomes impossible as long as we're prisoners of our own ego. I cannot find myself in myself, but only in another. My true meaning and worth are shown to me not in my estimate of myself, but in the eyes of the one who loves me. And that one must love me as I am, with all my faults and limitations, revealing to me the truth that these faults and limitations cannot destroy my worth in their eyes, and that I am therefore valuable as a person, in spite of my shortcomings, in spite of my imperfections, of my exterior package." I think that's what this All Saints Sunday is really all about, and why it's okay for us to connect it with Halloween, which began, as All Hallows Eve, the evening before All Saints Day, and to connect it with Zacchaeus, who came to know the total release of unbridled thankfulness through unqualified love of God. Thankfulness. Thankfulness, by the way, in the Greek language of the New Testament, is a word, Eucharistos. Have you heard that before? In some traditions, they call it Eucharist, communion, the Lord's table, the Last Supper, this table, Thanksgiving, Eucharist. This table is where Jesus was headed when he went through Jericho and encountered the scorned little rich man peering down through the huge leaves of a sycamore tree. Thankfulness. That's the true mark of a saint. Thankfulness to God. Do we know that thankfulness in our own lives, whoever we are? Whatever tree we're perched in, whatever challenge holds us down, whatever roller coaster throws us in the air, do we know thankfulness? Are we able, even for a moment, to come face to face with Jesus, seeing the overwhelming love of God in that face of compassion and acceptance and respect in our own level? Yes, we can. Certainly we can. Here at this table, here with this Lord. Amen.